Everybody. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about writing effective thesis statements. So for every essay that you write in this class, you will need a thesis statement. And thesis statements can be really tricky and hard. So I get that. And so I have some ideas and some techniques that may help you writing a thesis statement. A couple things to remember for this class, anyway. One, a thesis statement is just one sentence. That's it, one sentence. And then two is for the purposes of what we're doing, the thesis statement will always be the last sentence of the introduction. That way I know where it's placed and I know the point that you're trying to make in your paper. So what I want to do is share my screen with you so you get a few ideas and I'll give you some examples. So let me do that. So right now it's really just a blank screen. So for those of you that are not sure, the thesis is one sentence and it is the main point of your paper. So what is an effective thesis statement? An effective thesis is assertive and has an opposing point of view. That's really important to remember. It's an idea that needs to be developed through a discussion that includes specific support, evidence, and discussion. I think that wants a comma there. So I've found it easier over time to talk about the types of thesis statements that you want to avoid. So let me give you those, and then I'm going to give you an example of each one. So 5 types of thesis statements you want to avoid. One is a question. Thesis never poses in the form of a question. 2, a thesis that makes no claim and just makes an announcement. 3, things that are obviously true or a statement of fact. 4 is conventional wisdom, and 5 is too broad. And what I'm going to do is give you an example of each one of those. So, weak thesis number 1 states the point as a question. So this makes it sound like you really don't know what you're trying to prove in your paper. So here would be an example of that, which would be something like this. Why does the United States incarcerate more people than any other industrialized nation? It's an interesting topic, but it's not a thesis statement. So to revise that into a thesis statement, we're going to talk about why that is. And so let me try doing this so that it's all on one page. So sentencing, that up there. Sentencing in the American justice system unfairly targets minority groups, causing widespread high incarceration rates among people of color and the poor. So now I've given a reason why there's so much incarceration, and some people may absolutely disagree with that. That's fine. Your point, your job then in the rest of the paper is to prove that point with discussion, with research. So another example of a weak thesis would be one that makes no claim. So let me give you an example of something that makes no claim. This essay will address violent crime and its causes. That's just an announcement. So you never want to announce in your papers. You never want to say, in this essay, I'm going to write about, in this essay, I'm going to tell you about. That's not how it's done. And so you want to avoid that. Of course, you want to avoid the word you. I'll talk about that more in a different lecture. But here you're just saying, well, I'm going to be talking about violent crime, but it's not making a point. So to turn that into an actual thesis, Although there are several reasons for violent crime, the most significant reason is a lack of access of mental health services for marginalized groups. Okay, now I've got a thesis statement that needs to be written about. I need to prove that with some discussion, with some research. The next one are a thesis that is obviously true, excuse me, or a statement of fact. It needs no discussion. There's no opposing viewpoint. This is probably one of the most common traps that students fall into. And particularly in critical thinking, you want your thesis statement to be thought-provoking. And so let me give you an example of an obviously true statement of fact. Exercise is good for you. Terrible thesis statement. It's obviously true. Sure, you can argue that there are some people maybe with some physical limitations or certain elderly people that don't benefit from exercise. But generally speaking, you know, all of the data is out there. We all know that in general, exercise is beneficial. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, if I read something like that in a paper, I'm like, well, duh. It's kind of like writing, oh, the sky is blue, right? Or cats are animals. So a more effective thesis statement would be something like this. For decades, researchers have known that exercise is good for the body. However, new evidence suggests that exercise benefits a person mentally just as much as physically. Okay, so now I've got something where I'm really going to talk about the mental aspects of exercise, which is a little bit more interesting and has some meat to it. The next one is restates conventional wisdom. And this is very similar to number 3. They're almost interchangeable because exercise is good for you as conventional wisdom too, right? It's just things we already know. But let me give you one example. College students must work hard to be successful. Okay, you know, are there a few college students that probably breeze through college because they're, you know, they're just really bright and, you know, they can just put their work out and that sort of thing? True. But in general, we know that college students really have to work hard in order to be successful. So it's just saying something we already know. Like I said, it's kind of saying cats are animals. So a more effective thesis here is something like this. Give us the why. College students must be able to organize their time, stay motivated, and be willing to make sacrifices to be successful. Great. Now I've got a plan of attack. I know what the essay is going to be focused on. I know the point. And some people would probably disagree with that. Some people probably would disagree that, you know, a college student doesn't necessarily have to stay motivated to be successful. So this paper is going to argue that. Some people teach, and I'm one of those people that believe that every paper, an academic paper, is an argument. And I don't mean, you know, fight it, duke it out type of argument, but a reasoned argument where you're proving your point. And then the last one is thesis statements that are way too broad. Let me give you that. So, makes a claim that's too broad and needs no discussion, no opposing viewpoint. Poverty is bad, right? It's like saying child abuse is bad. People want to always write like a paper about sex trafficking, and it's like, well, what are you going to say about it? It's horrible. Nobody, you know, except for creepy, you know, people, You know, most reasonable people will agree that poverty is bad, that sex trafficking is bad, that child abuse is bad. And that's such a broad claim. I mean, you could write 100 pages, and we're certainly not doing that in this class, right? So you've got to narrow the focus, and you've got to make a point, make an arguable point. The main reasons poverty continues to plague America are poor legislative policies and corporate greed. Great. Now I know exactly what the paper is going to address. It's going to talk about bad laws and corporate greed. So that's a really, you know, good thesis. And all of these are the difference between, you know, a thesis that is like, you know, if I had to grade a thesis statement, you know, some would be D and F, you know, some of them maybe a C, like college students must work hard to be successful. If I had to give that a grade, I'd give it a C. The bottom one, I'd give it an A. So you have to think of it in those terms. The ones that are a question, why does the United States incarcerate more people? That one is really an F because it's not a thesis statement at all. It's just asking a question. So be sure and not do that. But once you have a thesis statement, it really helps with the writing of the paper because you know where your focus is going to stay. So I think that once you have a focused thesis, and our first paper's on the criminal justice system in a few weeks. So these are things that you want to keep in mind. Let me know if you have any questions. You can email me or we can talk about it. I often encourage students to email me their thesis statements before they submit their papers, and I can always give you some feedback on that. So I will talk to you later.